Hello and welcome to Here Comes the Bride, the Church Begins. This is devotional number 63 on the book of Acts. Hi, I'm Jim Devore. I'm the pastor at Cornerstone Church of Littlerock. Today we are in Acts chapter 27. Acts chapter 27. As we've been going through these devotionals in the book of Acts, we've just really been reading through the story of the early church and asking some very simple questions. One, what do we learn about God's eternal plan? Two, what do we learn about God's eternal plan as it operates through the church, as he begins the church, as he operates through the church, and as he operates using the church? And finally, how do we see God's eternal plan in light of how he uses individual people? And so, let's go ahead and jump into that. Paul is taking his final journey, and this isn't really a missionary journey he's taken, though he's going to be a missionary along the way. He has been, if we go through chapters 25 and 26, Paul arrived back in Jerusalem after the third missionary journey. The Jewish leaders tried to kill him. He was rescued by the Roman tribune, the Roman tribune discovered he was a Roman citizen, went through the proper aspects of a trial, and when Paul had an opportunity to end up in Jerusalem, to be tried in Jerusalem, he said, nope, I'm a Roman citizen. I want to be tried by Caesar. And they said, okay, well, to Caesar you will go. And so we are beginning the journey of him going to Rome. Now remember, Paul had a vision that he would get to Rome and share the gospel with them, and so that's what he's doing. It's interesting, we don't call this the fourth missionary journey, but Paul is going to continue to act very much like a missionary along the way, which is a reminder to us, okay, you don't have to be a missionary to be on an official missionary journey. You should be a missionary wherever you're at. So let's kind of watch and see what takes place here. So Acts chapter 27. Now what I want to do for you is to share, let you get a look at this map as we go along. I think this will help you out a little bit better here. So let's try that again. There we go. Okay. So I just kind of want you to be able to follow along as he heads for Rome. Acts chapter 27, beginning in verse 1. And when it was decided that we should sail for Italy, they delivered Paul and some other prisoners to a centurion of the Augustan cohort named Julius. And embarking in a ship of Adramyttium, which was about to sail to the ports along the coast of Asia, we put to sea, accompanied by Aristarchus, a Macedonian from Thessalonica. We hear about Aristarchus in other parts of the scriptures too. So let's pause here. This is Luke writing, using a lot of we and us, okay, in here. And he's giving us some facts so that the historians can go back later and kind of identify, oh, this event actually happened. So we've got the centurion named Julius. We've got a ship called Adramyttium. Now, though these names may not have been specifically dug up yet, okay, the idea is those people in the first century and second century are going to recognize those. And eventually, if we were to dig up ships and the people's names, we're going to find that Julius and Adramyttium were part of that, okay? All right. So verse 3. So they left Caesarea, where Paul was being kept. Verse 3, the next day we put in at Sidon, so you can follow on the right side of your screen and work your way up there. Okay, so the next day we put in at Sidon, and Julius treated Paul kindly and gave him leave to go to his friends and be cared for. That's amazing. So in other words, he released the prisoner on his own reconnaissance, okay? No bail was posted. Julius just trusted Paul and said, okay, you're inside and go hang out with some friends while we get ready for the rest of the journey. Okay? Let's see. And putting, verse 4, out to sea from there, we sailed under the lee of Cyprus because the winds were against us. So you notice they're going north of Cyprus, okay? Because they would want to go straight from Sidon to Crete. That's the shortest route, but they're leaving late in the year. We're about to find out how late. And so the wind is not treating them favorably. So they've got to take the routes where the wind's going to push them to the west. Okay? All right. Okay. So they, when we had sailed across the open sea along the coast of Cilicia and Pamphylia, that's not mentioned there in your map, but that's the area that is the region where you see Myra and Critias. Okay? All right. As when we had sailed across the open sea along the coast of Cilicia and Pamphylia, we came to Myra in Lycia. There the centurion found a ship of Alexandria sailing for Italy and put us on board. All right. Alrighty, forgive me for that bit of an interruption here. We are going to go back to some screen sharing here, if it's going to let me do that. Hold on a second. Let me figure out what happened. All right, I think I figured out what happened. Let's try this again. Okay. All right, thanks for bearing with me on that one, folks. Okay, so we are in Acts chapter 27. Okay, so there, verse 6, there the centurion found a ship of Alexandria sailing for Italy and put us on board. We sailed slowly for a number of days and arrived with difficulty off of Critias, as the wind did not allow us to go farther. We sailed under the lee of Crete off Salmone. Coasting along it with difficulty, we came to a place called Fair Havens, near which was the city of Lasea. Okay, so let's just do just a quick look here. They got somewhat quickly from here all the way over to here, to Myra, but then it took them, as Paul was said, it took them a long time to get from here to here. Didn't go nearly as far, but took them a long time. And then just because of the wind, they weren't able to cut across here, so they had to follow the wind out to the island here of Crete, okay? All right, so the wind's kind of pushing them around, and they're trying to kind of beat the winds and get where they got to go, but it takes a lot longer because the winds aren't flowing in their favor. Why? We're about to find out here. Since much time had passed, and the voyage was now dangerous because even the fast was already over, Paul advised them. Okay, this is the key. Okay, this is Luke giving us a time of year marker. The fast is going to be the Day of Atonement, and the Day of Atonement normally happened around the end of September, and not a lot of sailing was done from the end of September through the next several months because the winds weren't in their favor. They were unpredictable, and you never knew what could happen in the open sea. So clearly we're seeing that already. Okay, so watch Paul in verse 9. Since much time had passed and the voyage was now dangerous because even the fast was already over, Paul advised them, saying, Sirs, I perceive that the voyage will be with injury and much loss, not only of the cargo in the ship, but also of our lives. But the centurion paid more attention to the pilot and to the owner of the ship than to what Paul said. The centurion's like, hey, look, you're just a prophet, you're just a religious leader, you're not a ship captain nor the owner of a ship. So we're going to go ahead and trust that these guys know what they're doing. Now, if you were paying attention, you said, when they got to Myra, okay, then the centurion found a ship headed for Alexandria. So what would happen is the Romans, if they didn't want to take their own ships or for some reason didn't have enough available, basically the Roman guard would just procure another ship and say, hey, you're going my way, we're going on board. The owner nor the captain could say, we don't want to do that. Nope, you're taking us. We're going with you. And so that's kind of what's happening here, okay? All right, here we go. Because the harbor was not suitable to spend the winter in, the majority decided to put out to sea from there on the chance that somehow they could reach Phoenix, a harbor in Crete. So they wanted to try, they left here. They were just hoping to get here because this harbor would have been more suitable, okay? But that's not going to happen for them, okay? Here we go. A harbor of Crete, facing both southwest and northwest, and spend the winter there. So they simply wanted to spend the winter here in Phoenix. It's facing a better spot, away from the winds and the cold. Last the winter in there, early spring, get yourself onto Rome. Okay? All right. Now, when the south wind blew gently, supposing that they obtained their purpose, they weighed anchor and sailed along Crete, close to the shore. So they're like, okay, we got our south wind, so it looks like we can get here, and we're just going to try to get around to Crete. But watch what happens. But soon a tempestuous wind, that means a really bad, dangerous wind, called the northeastern, struck down from the land, and when the ship was caught and could not face the wind, we gave way to it and were driven along. So they tried to go against the wind to here, didn't make it, so the wind just started driving them across the open sea. Okay? All right. And when the ship was caught and could not face the wind, we gave way to it and were driven along. Running under the lee of a small island called Cauda, we managed with difficulty to secure the ship's boat. After hoisting it up, they used supports to undergird the ship. Then fearing that they would run aground on the Syrtis, they lowered the gear, and thus they were driven along. Since we were violently storm-tossed, they began the next day to jettison the cargo, make the ship lighter and lighter so it can stay above the water, more likely. And on the third day, they threw the ship's tackle overboard with their own hands. when neither the sun nor stars appeared for many days, and no small tempest lay on us, all hope of our being saved was at last abandoned. Since, just like Paul said, by the way, hey guys, if you do this, we're going to be lost at sea. Since they had been without food for a long time, Paul stood up among them and said, men, you should have listened to me and not have sailed. You should have listened to me and not have sailed from Crete and incurred this injury and loss. Yet now I urge you to take heart, for there will be no loss of life among you, but only of the ship. For this very night there stood before me an angel of God, and to whom I belong and whom I worship. And he said, do not be afraid, Paul, you must stand before Caesar, and behold, God has granted you all those who sail with you. So take heart, men, for I have faith in God that it will be exactly as I have been told. But we must run aground on some island. Okay? Whoa, let's just stop it there. Going to leave you with a cliffhanger. Just want to demonstrate something here, okay? Paul gave them warning. They refused to listen to him. Paul didn't come back to him and say, nah, 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 I told you, and now God's going to curse you all. You should listen to me. Paul came back very humbly and said, listen, guys, I tried to tell you it's not going well, but God's showing mercy on you. God's showing favor on you. He's appeared to me in a vision and a dream and has told me that I am going to get to Rome and none of you are going to lose your life. We're going to lose a lot of other stuff in the process, but you're not going to lose your life, and we're going to have to run aground on some island eventually so we can get ourselves out of this safely. Now, if you look at the map, you might have the sneak preview to that, but we're going to let you pause there and just kind of wrap things up. I think we just learned a very specific thing here. One, if God's plan is to get Paul to Rome, he's going to get him to Rome. Two, if God is going to use Paul's testimony in Rome for the future help of the church, then God's going to protect the church by getting Paul to Rome. But let's look at the personal thing here. Paul's response after being right and people to be put in danger as a result of ignoring him was not to be arrogant or rude or finger pointing. He did kind of wag the finger a little bit, but he came across humbly and with great help. So in other words, when you've challenged somebody and they've ignored you and they get into trouble, don't abandon them. Don't abandon them. Come alongside them. Perhaps the trouble will be the very turning point that with your humility to walk along beside them will turn them to Christ. If you're only known for your finger pointing and I told you so after they get into trouble, then if they get out of trouble, they're probably going to go somewhere else because they're going to feel safer there, or they're going to look to someone else to get out of trouble. So yes, share your concern for somebody who's walking in sin or disobeying the Lord. But when they face the consequences of those sins, don't abandon them. Come alongside them and continue to be their guide and someone you can trust in. Okay, we will pick up in Acts chapter 27, verse 27 tomorrow when we return with Here Comes the Bride, the church begins. Thanks so much for joining us.